All right, this is the book of Sirach, chapter 11, and I'm going to start at verse number 4. It says, "Boast not of thy clothing and raiment, and exalt not thyself in the day of honor. For the works of the Lord are wonderful, and his works among men are hidden." Right? And, you know, when the Lord causes things to happen, he has a wonderful way of doing it, man. And a lot of what is happening right here is that he's polishing up his jewels, okay? There are beautiful men all over this earth, all right, that are being tried and refined, okay? And yeah, I know that makes people think about that group in Chicago, but they can't take that and act like they own it, okay? Because that is what has been happening to the Lord's beloved, all right? And that's a beautiful thing, but those wonderful works are hidden from men, okay? Because we're not running around, in Bentleys and Maseratis and being all on the mainstream, big stream, and all of that, you know. Nobody need that. You know, what we need is deliverance out of this place. What we need is for these missiles to fly, okay? You need them to go on and roll out this chip. You got your backbone almost set up with the AI. Go on and roll it out, okay? You got your blockchain. Go on and roll it out, all right? So we can get the hell out of here, all right? As soon as you think you're going to eat, Esau, the Lord going to snatch that food out your mouth. In any case, many kings have sat down upon the ground, and one that was never thought of hath worn the crown. Okay? And what does that mean, man? You know what I'm saying? There's been kings that were thrown into slavery, man. Okay? Sometimes sat down on the ground, man. No, the ground, the earth always goes into slavery. Heaven goes into rulership, okay? So when the king had to sit down on the ground, right, that means you fell from your large position, okay? And you see that happen to people all the time, okay? They went from way up there on the 65th floor to down there in the alley between the buildings, okay? All right? Talking about a stellar fall, right? Which is why you don't get haughty if you get some type of position. We have a very good example of our man over there, Sakari, all right, who considered himself the chief priest, I guess. I mean, nobody that had any learning to them, you know, ever believed that. You got to be kidding me, bro. The chief priest of Israel, yeah, right. You know what I mean? But, you know, he was making his money and Hebrew and a Hellcat, and then all of a sudden you fell. And now I'm your brother. Okay. Something smells. That's weird. I'm your brother. All right. But that's what the Lord said was gonna happen. Okay, and you got to be careful. Okay, you boasting on clothing and raiment or whatnot. You know what I mean? Like, are you kidding me, bro? You know? Anyway, he said, many mighty men have been greatly disgraced, and the honorable delivered into other men's hands. Okay, right? So understand, right? He didn't just say that it's the mighty men, right? But he said the honorable have been given into men's hands. Okay. Now, one of those things should happen, one of those things shouldn't, but they both will, okay? They both have, they both do, all right? And that's only going to end when a righteous kingdom is set up, okay? All right? But, you know, time and chance happen unto all men. You know, a lot of people don't get that. They hear this one thing and then they're like, okay, so that means that this shouldn't happen to me. That's going to happen to wicked people. That means he wicked because he going through that. Man, look, you're being simple, okay? The Lord said time and chance is going to happen to all men. That's what it means. Okay? Right? You met the most wicked person you've ever known. They are not comparable to any of the brothers. Okay? We don't operate the same. We don't get down the same. But if we had a flaw, then that was enough. If you break any part of the law, you're breaking the whole thing. Okay? And so that's how we ended up over here together. But do not try and compare these street rats to like Elder Jahar or something. That's retarded, man. Okay? In any case. Blame not before thou hast examined the truth. Understand first and then rebuke, okay? And that's something that a lot of people have a hard time with. And a lot of times, you know, that's why they say you got to speak while it's relevant, right? Well, if something is going to lose relevance in a week or two or a month or whatever, like, what is the point of speaking on it in the first place, right? I mean, I guarantee you, if you're getting into it like that, you're probably crossing over a few other scriptures, right, that tell you how you're supposed to speak, interact, right, behave, you know? And so, literally, you should never be involved in that, right, to the point to where you won't have it in your life, you know? And it's a beautiful thing. Don't get it twisted. Right? But he said what? Blame not before thou hast examined the truth, right? You got to know about something before you're going to get over here to pointing fingers, you know? And I don't know how much people have to do, right? You know, I know everybody ain't got 6 children, but, you know, a lot of people have things to do, you know? And to be sitting around worried about blaming somebody else for something that you don't even know to be true, that's crazy. You know what I mean? But you see it all the time. You know? You get rumors, and then sometimes, you know, you get like what we saw in February where it hits. You know, and they're like, oh, we got the what they say? We got the text string and the this and that and the other. Pagan. Like, man. Woo. You know? But that's not when I said that right now, I'm not blaming nobody. I ain't gotta blame you. That's what happened. You know what I mean? But it is what it is, man. You know, he said, understand first and then rebuke. Right. Because before you say anything to anybody, the first thing you need to do is you need to go through your precepts, right? And figure out if you understand the matter correctly. You know? That's the standard that we use to figure out what is correct and what is not, right? And you cannot rebuke somebody from a place of ignorance, okay? Just because you're indignant, right, doesn't have anything to do with you being right. Okay? You have to be informed in order to inform somebody. You have to be informed in order to correct somebody. You have to know what the hell you're talking about before you try and correct somebody else. Okay? He says, answer not before thou hast heard the cause. Neither interrupt men in the midst of their talk, okay? And a lot of times, you know, when people don't want to agree with you or you're in a state of disagreement, right? People get all jumpy, you know? And they want to cut you off, which is a tactic that weak debaters use. They want to, I mean, nowadays, you know, you're not even in front of a person half the time, so they'll just, you know, hang up the phone or go to something else. Whatever, you know what I mean? But the point being is that you're supposed to answer not before you hear the cause, right? So if somebody has something to say to you, especially if you disagree with it, right? You need to hear the whole thing. And if you're disagreeing in righteousness, what you will hear while you're hearing their cause is everything you're going to need in order to pick them apart. Okay? Just like that. They'll hand you the weapons that you cut them up with. Okay? But that's the point of that, you know? And all of these are instructions. And all of these instructions are to be followed continuously. All right? And when you follow these instructions, certain things don't happen. Okay? Which is them weird-ass, wild, out of control arguments, emotional shit, you know? All that is coming from disobeying the law of Yahweh Bashem Yahshua. Okay? That's where the problem is. In any time you see problems, you can find in the scripture what the problem was. Okay? And that's when the bad things come in. Right? Salakia. He said, strive not in a manner that concerneth thee not, and sit not in judgment with sinners. Right. You know, because at the end of the day, right, if it ain't got nothing to do with me, why am I getting all upset about it? Okay? You got people upset about the president. You got people upset about they pastor or this person over here or this rapper over here. I don't give a shit. Okay? You have people 60 miles away, 300 miles away, 3,000 miles away, right? And they worried about what the hell you doing. Again, he says, strive not in a manner that concerneth thee not, and sit not in judgment with sinners, right? And what's this talking about, sitting in judgment with sinners, right? When you have people that are attacking the righteous brothers, all right, that teach this truth correctly, okay? Ha'amath, right? They teach this truth correctly, okay? Starting with Elder Tahar, going on down to the people that learned from him, okay? And if you say you didn't, then even Nate learned from Elder Tahar, man, all right? If you say you didn't, man, then whatever, bro. You know, that man deserves his double honors, okay? But in any case, right, going down to the teachers, right, when you say that we're doing the wrong thing and you sit in judgment of us, right, that's what that's talking about, right? Because here it is, you got people that ain't keeping the Sabbath. You got people that do not seek after his laws. You got people that don't have their beard on their face, that are filling their body with pork and shrimp and lobster, okay? And they'll sit and talk about us. And that's fucking crazy, man, right? But that's why he said his hidden ones, okay? Just like he said he was going to do, Salakia. The works of the Lord are wonderful. His works among men are hidden, right? You know? He's not about having us out and advertised right now, because Esau would just try and take us out, okay? You know? In any case. He said, my son, meddle not with many matters, for if thou meddle much, thou shalt not be innocent. Okay, so if you find yourself always in some shit, man, always meddling in this and meddling in that, right? He said you will not be innocent. Okay? And if thou follow after, thou shalt not obtain, neither shalt thou escape by fleeing. Whew. 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 That's pretty good. There is one that laboreth and taketh pains and maketh haste, and is so much the more behind. Come. Okay? So understand, man, you're doing all this quote-unquote work. You're doing all this quote-unquote studying. And it's like, I remember Saija, man. He's a great example of this, right? You know what I mean? To where you steadily pushing out this bullshit, right? But you don't understand that the more work you do, the more you're like heaping coals. You know what I mean? Let me get a better example, right? Let's say, for example, you teaching 90 things right and 2 things wrong, right? But you keep teaching them 2 things, and you keep teaching them 2 things, and you keep teaching them 2 things. That is a stain upon you, okay? If you do 10 videos in a row and 5 of them didn't get the point, they weren't right, or they were off, right? You didn't get credit for 10 videos, right? And it's not going to benefit you. It's not going to benefit anybody else, and their blood is on your hands. Okay? You got to be careful in this thing, man. You know, and people don't know that. He said, if thou follow after, thou shalt not obtain, neither shalt thou escape by fleeing, man. Okay? So you can chase after it, you know what I mean? You're never going to get it, right? The election have obtained. I'm Salaka. Let me get this. Jacob have not found what he sought after, but the election have obtained it. Salaka. Okay? We're talking about wisdom, man. All right? We're talking about the proper understanding of this truth, okay? The knowledge of Yahweh about Shem Shah. Okay? He said, oh, we were back to this one. There's one that laboreth and taketh pains and maketh haste, and is so much the more behind, right? And when you're talking about behind in that sense, you're talking about behind in your education, man. You know what I mean? Because you're so busy running, right, and not doing enough studying or looking around or watching on the wall, whatever the case may be, right? Because there has to be a balance to these things, all right? That you done got ahead of yourself, right? And now you're more behind than you would have been, okay? Because this is when you talk about a race, right, you have to understand that everybody's always running, okay? So the people that have been running stronger for longer are a long way away from some other people, you know what I'm saying, that have been jogging for a little while, you know? But if you try and if you at the beginning of your walking this thing and you trying to jog or you trying to sprint and you ain't even got your legs strong enough to really walk, then what's gonna happen? You know what I'm saying? You're gonna fall down. You're gonna get exhausted, okay? And you're gonna be even more behind. All right. Again, there is another that is slow and have need of help, wanting ability and full of poverty. Yet the eye of the Lord looked upon him for good and set him up from his low estate, okay? And what does that go to, man? There's another that is slow, okay? So you're taking your time, you're looking, okay? And have need of help, right? Where do you get that help? You sit down at the feet of learned men, okay? He said, wanting ability and full of poverty, man, okay? Wanting ability, man, all right? Because you didn't even know how to do this the right way, all right? Full of poverty because you didn't know none of these scriptures, okay? All right? That was the state that all of the men that have ever come into this were in before they came in, okay? He said, yet the eye of the Lord looked upon him for good and set him up from his low estate. And that's why people talk about being set up, okay? Because the Lord sets these things up, okay? The Lord put us on our feet, man, all right? Breathe that breath of life into us, man, all right? He said, and lifted up his head from misery, so that many that saw it marveled at him, okay? So what he's talking about there, Salaki, lifted up his head from misery, okay? And that's what we're waiting for, all right? Flat out, okay? Any one of my people that's celebrating being in this place, man, you've got to be kidding me, man, okay? To this day, for 100% of the people that live here, except for the owners, right, this is a slave house, man. You have to work to eat. You have to work to have a place over your head. The price of things has gone up 30 times since I was a young man. 30 times. We ain't talking about 30%. We're talking about 30 times. Okay? But you're supposed to live like your predecessors? No, they know you can't do that. So they squeeze you and they squeeze you and they squeeze you. Okay? Misery, man. All right? When you see people unlearned, when you see people eating unlawful foods, when you see people poisoning the food supply, man. Okay? When you see these people poisoning our skies, right? Putting fluoride and recycled sewage water into your water system. Okay? It's misery, man. You know? And these people revel in it like it's like a hog in slop, you know? But anybody that understands something knows what slop is, man. And you don't want to revel in that. Okay? He said prosperity and adversity, life and death, poverty and riches come of the Lord. Right. Okay? So if you're in any given position, the Lord put you in that position. All right? And that's it. You can't brag because you're rich. You can't just whine and wail because you're poor. The Lord put you in that position. Okay? You deal with it according to the scriptures. All right? Because what you come to understand is that what's real about life never changes. It never changes. You're doing the same things. Okay? You're going to respond the same way regardless. Okay? Now the Lord did speak about not giving you too much. You know what I mean? That you might get prideful and not giving you too little that you might steal. Right? But what that's talking about is urges. Right? And him acknowledging that you have to have some level of satisfaction in order to perform in a healthy manner. Okay? 1930. All right. Wisdom, knowledge, and understanding of the law are of the Lord. Love and the way of good works are from him. Right? So if you're trying to figure out if somebody is blessed of the Lord, right? A man of the Lord, right? Then you would go to his wisdom and his knowledge, his understanding of the law, You know, people be trying to separate them things as if being ignorant is a motherfucking advantage. No, okay? It's just study to show yourself approved. Those are the people that should be approved, right? But what they say, a folly is set in great dignity, right? People too lazy to fucking study. So they want to have this mystical place where they just knew by the Spirit, right? Which is in the volume of the book. Go ahead. They just knew in the Spirit that this was the right answer. Well, the scripture said it ain't. Okay? All right? But if you know somebody that knows this book like that, you know what I mean? That is telling you that the Lord gave him that gift. Okay? It's not saying that some people don't get their gifts taken or you got a gift, but you don't have the whole thing right. Okay? That's when you hear about the sick and the lame. Okay? And what you try to do is teach them the right way. Okay? But, you know, some people still gonna rap. Some people are not gonna be given his proper name because he don't want to put his name on them yet. All right? You understand? But the name of the Heavenly Father is Yahweh. The name of his son is Yahweh Shai. Okay? Anything else is an error and an affront. And as it says, hold on, let me get this. As a matter of fact, I'm gonna go to the next one.